Hi, I'm Laurie. I'm with thewifeexpert.com. I have an amazing guest who actually specializes in midlife crisis. Or she's a psychologist and she specializes in adult crises. And I asked her to come on. She lives in Australia. I'll tell you a little bit about her. But we're going to learn a lot today because I have questions about, is it real? Is a midlife crisis really real? What do we think? What does this doctor think? So she's a psychologist, she's a public speaker, she's a mindset coach, but she's a psychologist, which makes her on the up and up of what's really going on up there in education for midlife crisis, which is what I care about, which is what all I do. In fact, I'm going to get, since I don't have any advertising, this is my book. It's on Amazon. It's called My Grateful Book. So if your husband left you, your wife left you, get that book. I have some other books on there as well. I also have a program at thewifeexpert.com that you can join. It's a video program. It teaches you exactly what to do, what to say, how to act, how to get through this crappy time of your spouse in a midlife crisis. The author today has written her book, I believe, based on someone having a crisis, which a lot of the wives and husbands I talk to go through that crisis as well, meaning their spouse is having one, so they start to go through one too. So we'll see what happens. So anyway, let's welcome our guest, Marney, Dr. Marney Lishman. Am I saying your last name right?
You certainly are. Hello.
Okay, good. So we were talking before you came on about that noise in the background, and since you're in Australia, it actually sounds like a parrot. Do you have a parrot?
Oh, maybe it is. There's a lorikeet. I have a lorikeet parrot in the backyard. Yes, I do.
Do you own it or is it just visiting?
It is a rescue bird. So yeah, it's visiting, but kind of long-term visiting at the moment. So who knows? It might be with me forever.
So
This beautiful bird.
Awesome. So where in Australia are you?
I'm in Perth, which is in Western Australia. So I believe we're the most isolated city on the planet. So there's a bit of an interesting fact for you.
Yeah. Perth is like, so if you guys, if you're watching this, you're not listening to it. If this is Australia and on the map, Sydney, Melbourne, not Melbourne, all are all over here, New Zealand, and then way over here is Perth, all through these desert no man's land. I get it. But exactly. On the water.
Right on the bottom, the most beautiful beaches in the world. So yeah, I'll kind of just push Perth for tourism there.
Awesome. I've heard spot. It's wonderful.
I've heard it's great. Is lovely.
Okay, so talk to me. You're an author and you've written some books, and we could get into all of them, but I want to focus on the one.
Yes.
What is the title? Why don't you tell it to everyone listening?
It's called Crisis to Contentment, and it's all about the getting of wisdom midlife. So that's the subtitle. So yeah, it's a very interesting book and really a sign of the times, and I really wanted to tap into it. Like you, Laurie, I work with people and we get to hear the stories, don't we? So we probably have our finger on the pulse of what's going on in society a lot of the time when we get to hear those vulnerable stories. So yeah, Crisis to Contentment.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, well, this is the thing is that...
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, my book is, I guess, I spend a lot of my time listening to what people are really thinking and feeling in response to what's going on in their life. And I think what I'm seeing more than ever is, adults in midlife, and we can be really subjective of what midlife is in terms of age, in terms of a number, because it's could span a few decades, couldn't it? Where people
like
are
what?
Going through,
Give me the ages.
I would say anything from 30 to, I know people in their 70s that still resist the elderly term. So I would say some people are still like, I'm not old yet. So
I'm 90. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. They're going through stuff. They're going through really hard stuff. And I really wanted to tap into that because I'm seeing a lot of people who are quite psychologically stuck in regards to things that they're going through.
Tell me about that.
Yeah,
Give me an example. Obviously, you can't talk about your clients, but if you can kind of round about it and have a few people.
Yeah. I feel like on the whole, people are really tired. I think adults are really tired at the moment. I think there's a lot of roles that we have, a lot of hats that we have to wear, which is very different to, say, adults and people in midlife, say, 50 years ago. I think the society is very different. So I think they're burnt out, they're irritable, they're tired. And of course, when we're feeling like that as a result of whatever we're going through, or the busyness of life, it's going to flow onto other areas of our life, like our relationships or our parenting or our work. So I would say, yes, for a myriad of reasons, people are tired. Lots of chaos often is going on. And I think, a lot of changes that we're having to deal with in our own identity as well.
Okay. So is it more men or more women that struggle with this?
It's such a tough question. For me as a practitioner, as a psychologist, I see both. I see males and females that I work with. So I feel like when you talk in society and you're listening, you've got your finger on the pulse in society, you're seeing more women talking about it, which I think is absolutely fabulous. I think probably it's kind of a good time to be alive, isn't it? Where women are speaking up and they're talking about how they're feeling. That probably wasn't the case decades and decades ago. But I feel like when I'm listening to the stories of some of my clients, men are feeling in a similar way, different but similar. And I see it's all genders at the moment. Yeah.
All genders. There's two. We just found out today. There's two. Men, women. So when it comes to men or women, who in this crisis of midlife, who is more apt to choose a girlfriend or a friend versus a new car or moving out of the house? Your opinion on that?
Yeah, that's a tough one, isn't it? I feel that it's interesting, isn't it? Because, you're coming from the US and, we've watched some wonderful Hollywood movies over the years. And it seems, doesn't it, that men are very flippant with their midlife crises and probably use unhelpful coping mechanisms to deal with those crises. And that women...
That's a great definition. Unhealthy. Yes.
Yeah, because it's, again, that crisis is very difficult, isn't it? It's a very chaotic psyche that we have when we're in crises. And I think a lot of us, if we don't control that kind of way of thinking, we'll reach for unhelpful ways and unhelpful coping mechanisms to soothe ourselves. And for some people, and I think sometimes, I guess stereotypically, we would say that men would go and get a red car, a fast red car, a younger girlfriend, whatever it is to soothe that inner turmoil, where I would say, and I'm being very general here, that women probably cope with it a little bit better, maybe because they tap into their feelings a little bit more and can see it and can observe it, and also kind of slow down the pace a little bit. And sometimes when we slow things down a little bit, we're less likely to reach for unhelpful things. So I'm being very general here.
I need you to get specific, because people who are listening are hanging on every word. What does she know? What can I learn? But we'll get there. So in your opinion, what is it that brings these people, be it at 30, 40, 50, 60, what is it? Like, is there something that's, in your opinion, I have mine, but this is your time.
Yes.
In your opinion, what sparks this?
Yeah, what sparks the midlife crisis, do you think? Is that what you mean?
In your opinion, what brings it on? Besides the fact, age.
Yeah, I think, again, I think it's a myriad of reasons, but I think it's the losing of the self for whatever reason. It's, at the end of the day, it's that kind of losing of identity. I don't know who I am anymore as a result of all these things. That's what I would think. That's what I would think. Yeah. Okay. And it might mean because there's change. So they're reacting to what's going on in the world. Yeah. And there's the slow, almost misalignment of self as a result of all the things that are happening in their life.
What about childhood? Do you see that ever coming up in your opinion?
Yes. Yeah. I think a lot of Well, I think a lot of our blueprint for operating is laid in those early years, of course. And I think a lot of us, and I don't mean this in a rude way at all, because I think a lot of us, we kind of sleepwalk through life, don't we? Is that we use that blueprint for operating unconsciously, and we just get thrusted out into adulthood from our teen years using the same blueprint as we were using when we were younger. So in those kind of first 20 years. And then we often are doing the same things that we were doing, that we learned from kind of our environments when we were younger and things like that, and the things that happened to us. And I think we also jump into, in our 20s, onto a socially defined pathway as well, which might not align with who we truly are. So we're almost not thinking consciously about who we are and where we want to go. And then you get into kind of some of the tough moments of the trials and tribulations of life in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. And then there's a moment when you're like, hang on, I don't even know who I am anymore. And I think when we feel like we're in misalignment, then sometimes the people that we're with, we become misaligned to them, or we may never have been aligned with them in the first place. So there's kind of a difficult moment, which could be a catalyst for either someone breaking up or finding themselves and realigning again.
So I caught something there, because I know my listeners are going to catch it. They may not have been aligned at all. Tell me about that. How do you know if that's true?
This is the thing, is that I don't think a lot of people do know. I think they do sleepwalk through life and just do all the things that they're supposed to do, or that society is telling them to do, and they don't really think about it. And I think a lot of people actually live their whole lives like that, with a sense of, misalignment, or something's not right, or maybe not even feeling happy at all or content. And that's the point of my book, is that you want to be content in life, don't you? And I think many people don't live like that. Yeah. So I think misalignment is you're just kind of just treading through life and not really conscious of the direction of it, or if it's the right thing for you.
So can you tell me a story of, obviously we don't need to know any names, but just maybe a generic one of where, so you thought someone was married and they had this type of crisis where, maybe you thought, like, defining that maybe they're not supposed to be with this woman and they had a different end.
Yeah. Well, I think, I can think of, this is very difficult because I can't, be very specific with any of my clients, but I have to be very, very general. But I see a lot of, people that get married very, very early in their lives and just almost go into, because sometimes we chase what's familiar to us, don't we, from our childhood as well. So people will pick a partner or get into a relationship with what is familiar to them, and then 10, 15 years have a family, get into it, and then suddenly you're like, this is not right for me, because they're growing at the same time. This isn't working for me. Or, the other person might be the same, but they've changed across the course of their kind of adulthood. And then they get to their kind of 40s and 50s and it's just, something's not right. There's an angst, or there's a dis-ease in how they're feeling. And suddenly they're like, I can't do this anymore. And sometimes I don't even think it's conscious. I don't think they can even pinpoint what it is. It's just a feeling that's coming over them. And then they go and do unhelpful things, like I was saying before, to try and cope with it, and make sometimes decisions that are quite regretful, like go and find someone else, or have an affair, or leave, when they haven't really consciously thought through it.
How do you help people in those decisions that they're destructing or destroying their own selves and their families?
Yeah, well, they have to sit in it, don't they? Because I think sometimes people have to, when they have to sit in the consequences of their decision for a while, and the feelings associated with that. You can't tell people when you see the train wreck about to happen. I'm sure as a coach you might find that as well, is that there's advice we can give, and there's support we can give, but sometimes you have to stand back and get them to kind of self-reflect as they're going. I think that's really important, because it's up to our clients to learn what's working and what's not. So I think for me as a psychologist, it's listening and sometimes challenging people, but I think ultimately what we want people to do is to actually evaluate their experiences and decisions that they're making themselves to see if it's the right thing that they've done or not. And whether it's the best thing to do going forward in their life and whether they will do it again. It's a learning curve, isn't it? Life.
Yeah, it certainly is. Every year, every 10 years, I'm like, oh, I know everything. And then I go for a little, no, I don't know anything. And then I go a little further, oh, I know it. Now I'm at the point, I know nothing.
Well, yeah, and that's the best place to be because we know what we know at the time, don't we? And often we're very confident with that. But, you know, I think, you know, if we realize that we know nothing and that we have that kind of learning mindset that we need to know so much more, and that even as a person that we change across the lifespan because we're constantly interacting with our life, aren't we, and the people around us and everything in our context, and we do change. So I think that self-reflection and that constant evaluation is extremely important for all of us, because it can be a real catalyst, can't it, for not only growth, but for us to steer ourselves on a better pathway going forward. Otherwise, we're just unconsciously treading through life, and sometimes it might not be right for us.
Have you ever seen in your business in Perth, have you ever seen people leave and go have an affair and then decide that probably wasn't the best idea? Yeah. And then maybe turn around and say, my wife has just been amazing this whole time. Or my husband has always just been there. Do you ever see that?
Yeah, I do. And people get quite... I think there's a bit of a schema, isn't there, involved in the word of affairs. There's a schema involved in it. As in schema? People... Like as in when people think of an affair, they're like... Like, this is a terrible thing, and it's the ending.
I'm going to hell.
Yes. Yeah, I'm going to hell for being part of an affair. But our relationship is doomed forever if a partner has an affair. But I certainly do see sometimes people moving into kind of an affair kind of situation, being driven by their emotions at the time without much thought. Because again, sometimes it's that self-soothing, and it's not until they've really reflected after the fact, or maybe even during it, where they've gone, this wasn't the right thing at all. So it's not until the behaviours happen do they actually have the time to reflect on whether it worked or not. And sometimes people do get back together with the learnings. You know, once they've reflected on it, actually go back into their relationship. And if the other partner has been really allowed the space for that person to accept the consequences and reflect on it, people do get back together. And sometimes partners are really forgiving and really understanding of what was going on for that person that led to the affair.
We got to call those partners are called saints. The ones who are forgiving, right?
Well, yeah.
Because that's very hard.
It is very hard, but I think there's a level of empathy, isn't there? A high level empathy that is required, because it involves being able to understand, but really look through the lens of someone else other than yourself. And if you're riddled with hurt, you know, if you're heartbroken, we become very, and I don't mean, I need a better word for self-absorbed, but we are. When we're heartbroken, we're so in ourselves, aren't we? We're so riddled with those feelings of hurt that sometimes we can't understand from another person's point of view at all for a while. So to be able to pull out the empathy early on in the piece is quite difficult, isn't it? But it's needed.
100%. And I do believe the spouse that learns empathy actually grows more than the one who has wandered into trying to understand his own self or her own self. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, empathy is powerful, isn't it? And I think we need to all be talking more about empathy, because And even if you don't kind of naturally, innately have empathy, just learning what it all means and actually how to apply it in life practically, because you'll go a long way if you're able to look through the lens of somebody else other than yourself.
So why don't you describe what you believe empathy really is and how someone could go about practicing it? Do you have an idea on that?
Yeah. We go through life, don't we, looking through our own lens. And I think we have to really be careful, particularly in the modern world where it's very fast. It feels so fast paced, isn't it? That a lot of people are just marching through life and just looking through their lens. And it's easy to gloss over everything, really, because we're just very focused on ourselves. And many of us are very ego driven as well. So to be able to kind of elicit empathy in our interactions with other people, we have to slow down, don't we? We have to slow down and be really mindful that it's going to be very helpful in every interaction we have, whether it's professionally or personally. So it's about really deeply trying to understand and having an intent to understand what it's like for other people and how they're feeling and feeling alongside them. And if you can't quite get there, it's being really curious about what they're going through and how they're feeling. And it's asking questions and not butting in, and really listening and really sensing the feelings associated with what that person's saying as well. And if you don't understand, asking more questions, without judgment and with unconditional positive regard. And that's really hard to do, isn't it, if you're angry and when you're heartbroken, which, people have a right to do if they're hurt. But that's a natural urge, isn't it? That's what comes first a lot of the time when we're heartbroken and when we're angry at someone for their behaviours. So to be able to override that is quite tricky at the beginning.
And wonderful. It's almost impossible in the beginning, right?
Yeah.
Over time.
Yeah. But I say to people all the time, you're allowed to be angry. You're allowed to sit here and cry. So you've got to hold space for that, don't you? You've got to hold space for those people's feelings. You've got to allow them to come. Don't be holding that in. So
if you're working on this and you have written a book on it, and there still is no medical term that is something that they quantify and qualify that exist. True?
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Why is that?
Yes.
What's the problem?
I think
Why can't they figure that out?
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I think sometimes when you look at research, they debunk a lot of the phenomenons out there.
Joke.
But as practitioners who really deep dive into the human psyche and real people, we understand what's going on. There's a lot of things. There's lots of, how people kind of bag TikTok and things like that for all these kind of terminologies, whether it's, kind of, lying flatism or, snail girling or, all these weird terms that come up. But that shows you when people are making things viral and things are resonating, it's telling you what people are feeling and thinking in society. And I think the term midlife crisis has been out there for such a long time. And that's society telling us that people go through lots of different things in adulthood. And unfortunately, I think people think that adults just have it together all the time and that we know everything. But, I think, sometimes it's really, we go through really tough stuff. And I think we're really at risk in a very fast-paced world that is moving, that we're glossing over things that really need to be tapped into a little bit. Because it's a chance, isn't it, to do something about it if you're having a hard time, rather than just sweeping everything off under the rug and just getting on with things. These moments of crises,
I think most of the women I deal with want to sweep everything under the rug just to get their husband home and keep everything normal again. So going back to the comment we talked about earlier about how do we know if, this is a question I get a lot from women, and I have my opinions, but again, you're here to give me yours. What, in your opinion, how can you decide or guide someone to understand that maybe they didn't really want to be with this person in the first place? How do you get there?
Yeah. Well, that's something that they have to figure out for themselves, isn't it? That's something that people really have to reflect on. And it's not until they're, it's a really
here, let me help you, because what I've learned, and just from my studies and research, is that when someone's in a crisis and they have, I call them a horse face, a sidekick, side hustle, Susie, they have a tendency to lie and recreate their past. So wives will hear, "I've never loved you." And it's, "I haven't loved you in 3 years. I haven't loved you in 10 years. And then they'll say, "I haven't loved you in 20 years. And the wife is sitting there going, "I've only known him for 18 years. What is he talking about?" So it's, he started out with just a few, and she's like, "What is going on? Why is he recreating history?" Do you have any comments on that?
Yeah. Yeah, I just feel like the people that I work with, they come in with like these different analysis and different behaviors and different observations of what is actually going on. And I sometimes do think people, to your point, is that they're feeling the way they are at the moment, and it's almost like they've got a bag full of things from the past, and they pick and choose what they bring out to almost back up what they're saying.
Prove their case.
Yeah.
I don't love you. Here's why.
Yes. Yeah. So
absolutely.
It's almost like we walk around with that bag, don't we? And however we're feeling in the present moment, we bring out, and it might be things that they've done, things how I feel, and they bring it to the present moment to almost give evidence for what they're thinking and feeling at the moment. And of course we know that we're just picking and choosing, aren't we? And it can be a very skewed reality of what actually has happened. So yes, to your point, I think you're correct that people do that. But then there's other people that, don't almost analyze it that way. They're just...
How do they do it?
How they're feeling. They're just driven by how they're feeling at the moment and not reflecting at all. But when we're talking about, like we're saying, people are consciously picking and choosing, I think sometimes people aren't doing any of that at all. They're just, they're doing it almost in an unconscious way. So it's there, but they're not actually reflecting on it. It's all just happening so quickly and almost beyond their actual awareness. And I think that's what happens probably with lots of affairs as well. They're not thinking. It's not thinking. There's something else driving it that's deeper, and the thought doesn't come later.
What is it?
What do you think doesn't come later? Well,
what's driving them?
Well, I think, it just could be unhappiness, not even with the person. It could be other things in their life. When we're talking about midlife crises, we're not just talking about people being unhappy in a relationship and reflecting on that. There might be something going on in their career, or something else involved in their self or their place in society, or their own mental health and well-being that they're struggling with. So it's almost like the relationship has... there's something that's got the affair or the breaking down of a relationship is a byproduct of something else that's got nothing to do with the actual partner. It's to do with their unhappiness in other areas of their life. So to be able to get to that stage takes time.
So how much time do you think, in your opinion, a midlife crisis lasts from the time they find you and start working with you? How long do you usually see people like this?
I think once people realize it can happen really quickly, as in the healing journey of it, I think it becomes a catalyst for moving on to a better pathway, whatever that may be, if you get help and support. So this is why this conversation is so important, isn't it? Is to kind of go, you're certainly not alone if you're feeling like you're in some sort of crisis right now. And the quicker you get help and support for it, I see people changing very quickly, because it's a massive aha moment when you start evaluating your life and reflecting on what's working and what's not, and what can I do better, and who am I, those sorts of questions. The quicker you ask yourself those and you start trying some different things, you're putting it all on the table, aren't you? So quite quickly, within weeks, sometimes months, people can get onto a better pathway. So it's almost a course correction of sorts. The quicker you get help from a psychologist or a coach, bit like, when you have a mentor and some mentor says something so profound to you, you're like, oh my gosh, that's it. That's a light bulb moment. So I think the quicker anyone starts reflecting and gets support for it, they can get back on track very quickly.
Yeah, it's almost like a seed being planted. I've had people have those aha moments just from being in an elevator with some stranger who says one thing to them, and
Yes.
they remember it. It shifts their whole life.
Oh, it
I
does.
think
It does. Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So,
yes.
in your experience with dealing with this, do you ever see anyone who might have been sexually abused as a child, or might have had, parents go through it? Let's take them one at a time. Have you seen, because I'm trying to, I don't want to say I'm trying, I'm uncovering, in your opinion, how it starts. And maybe a seed was planted a long time ago because a child was abused and they didn't really have their identity, or they figured out they'll do this for a while and then they got older, and then I've had many clients whose spouses have been abused by, I hate to say this out loud, but by a religion. It happens, and it doesn't mean that religion is bad, but it's horrific. And these men grow up and they start having affairs, and they go through a crisis, and they don't think their wife should ever have been married to them. It's tough.
Yeah.
Have you seen any of that?
Yes, I have. Yes, I think a lot of us, kind of people that work with other people, whether it's coaches or counselors or psychologists, we see a lot of people where that childhood trauma has very much informed some of the behaviours in adulthood. So I think part of the process of working with someone in adulthood is to be able to uncover some of those things, because I think the more we uncover about the experiences that we've gone through in our early years, then you've got more power over them, haven't you, to change some of those kind of unhelpful, say, ways of thinking, or some of those unhelpful beliefs that have got in the way of us living a life that's truly aligned with us. So I think that is part of the process. And sometimes, to your point about how long does it take to get through a midlife crisis, it's very different for everyone, because we're all such different people. But I think
ballpark it for me.
Yeah.
Just
ballpark
your
it.
opinion.
Yeah.
Your
like
opinion,
I
because
said, I think, weeks. I think weeks, months.
You're fast. Okay. Well, most of the people that I work with, their husbands don't think there's anything wrong with them.
Yes.
And they're perfect. Yes. They just want to be with this other lady while their kids are watching. It's normal, right? So they don't think it is. So that takes, my guess is anywhere from 6 months to 2 years if they don't have help.
Well, this is, to your point, is that I think a lot of people are sent for help for something because a partner has sent them. So I think it's very different, isn't it? I think when you come off your own back and you're already at that readiness, I'm already at that stage of change, then it's quicker. So when I'm working with people, when I'm coaching people, usually most of the time they're coming because they've read something that I've written, or they've seen me in the media or something like that. So they're already at that stage of change where my words can actually help them. So then it's quite quick that they can kind of start navigating and start reflecting really quickly. But then certainly there's other people that take a lot of time. Everyone's very different. I don't think there's a one size fits all approach to human beings at all.
Do you ever do Zoom?
Yes.
Like take people in America?
Yes.
Because I'm sure someone might call you from this.
Yeah, I think Zoom. Isn't it wonderful, the internet?
Yeah,
how we
it's
can
amazing.
Connect with it. It's so good.
I talk to people in countries I've never heard of before, and I'm like, "How did you find me?"
Yeah, that's wonderful. The beauty of the modern world.
It's so true. Okay, so I want to read a little bit. Your book is called Crisis to Contentment.
Yes.
Each phase of life brings with it its own set of challenges, and the average middle-aged person is busier than ever. Whether it's career, raising children, caring for elderly, that's tough. Dealing with loss, loneliness, navigating divorce, tempering hot flashes. Ugh, I never had those. I'm so grateful. Or keeping up with fast-paced societal changes, or have a lot going on your plate. And I'm adding, or dealing with a midlife crisis, crazy husband who's taken on a girlfriend and won't talk to the rest of the family. That's my part to that.
Yeah.
But with deep reflection and tapping into the lessons, learnings from the first half of your life, things can be better than they've ever been before. So Crisis to Contentment is all about navigating the trials and tribulations of adulthood, reflecting on the range of crisis that adults might experience, and why it's crucial to listen to the wisdom brought forth by your emotional angst for a more contented and transformative future. Beautiful. Sounds like a great book.
It was fun to write.
Was
It
it?
was
Why?
fun to write. It was fun to write. Because I guess I was tapping into the people that I work with. But you know what? I'm a midlife woman too. I'm a
How old are
middle-aged
you?
woman too.
Can you tell me?
am. I never even say it. Late 40s. Late 40s.
You're
Late
so young.
40s.
Are
Late
you
40s.
Are you married?
No, I'm not. No.
Ever?
No. Yes,
Never
I've been
been
married.
married?
Yes, no, I've been married.
Okay,
But,
can I ask you some
yes.
questions?
Yes, if you like. Well, yeah, no. No. Well, I have to be again, as a psychologist, I have to kind of keep my personal life to myself a little bit. Yeah, heavily regulated industry. So yes, I have been married. But I found this book really quite therapeutic to write, because I'm going through midlife, and there's times I'm a little bit irritated. Sometimes I find people a little bit more annoying. So I thought, oh, I'm not the only one who's feeling like this. So let's write a book about it, because I'm noticing the changes as well.
Interesting. All right, I won't ask you any more questions. So being married is challenging. Yes?
Yeah.
Being in a crisis in marriage is hell, right?
Yeah. Yes,
Yeah.
for sure.
But there is a way out of it.
It is, yes, yeah. And I think it's really important that we are not emotionally driven on either parties, and just sit in that space a little bit longer, even if it's really painful, until you can get to a point where you're thinking again, because otherwise you'll be very driven by some of those negative emotions which will naturally pop up when someone is making a decision you don't agree with, or someone, whether it's a mistake or they're just doing something that you don't agree with. It's a hot pot of emotions, isn't it? And rightly so. But if we don't stop and think about that and reflect on it, we will all be emotionally driven, and we know sometimes that does not work. So it's reflective time, isn't it? And a catalyst sometimes
Especially when
for
you have-
something way better.
When there's a third person involved, that's even
Yes.
tougher.
Oh, for sure. Yes.
I have more questions, but I'm not going to ask those. Okay, let me see what other questions I have, because I don't want to leave anything out being like, I asked all these questions. Okay, God, I'm good. I didn't even have my notes, and I asked all these questions.
I know, you're
All right.
good. So good.
In your opinion, what do you think is the biggest secret to having a successful life?
What is I think it's know thyself first.
What's the best way to do that, in your opinion?
I think it is having moments, and I think people need to do this more than ever in this world that we're living. I think people are just moving too fast and they're not self-reflecting. So I think it is just having moments of presence and stopping and just thinking and reflecting, even just on your day and how you've interacted with the people around you. I think we all need to slow down. Slow down.
What if we slow down and those thoughts start spinning? I have clients who do this, right?
Yes.
And the thoughts won't stop, especially when their husband is over there with Horseface, Susie, right? I call her Susie. And what are they doing? What's going on? How do you quiet those thoughts?
Because we have to watch for that, don't we? And this is the thing with stopping, and this is why people busy themselves up even more, because they can't get through the worrying and the rumination all the time. And we know that anxiety loves spare time, doesn't it? It loves it. It's like, woohoo!
Oh my God.
Here I am.
I'm going to steal that. Anxiety loves spare time.
Yeah, it's like, okay. Yeah. And because it loves spare time, it'll have those kind of cognitive distortions where it'll go to worst case scenario or catastrophize, or all or nothing thinking, and it doesn't play around in the gray area. So I think those thoughts will naturally, because we have that negativity bias, we'll always go to the worst case scenario. So it's observing those thoughts and learning to rein them back in, isn't it? rein them and learn to, so you're observing your thoughts, you're observing the chitter chatter in your head. So, and once you can actually do that, you can play with them, you can challenge them, you can come up with alternative explanations, you can learn to let them go. You know?
So why did you become a psychologist, and how long have you been one?
Oh, I've been at one for, like probably nearly 20 years. Being a psychologist, about
Were you a
20 years.
psychologist? Were you a psychologist when you were married?
Yes, I was. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I was. Yeah. So, And I often say to people are like, why'd you become a psychologist? And you know what? I wanted to be a lawyer. And there's something...
Same thing.
Very similar. I was going to be a lawyer. And I actually can't tell you what made me write down on my university application form. It must be something unconscious that drove me to do it. Because it actually, now reflecting back, I think, of course, what else would I be than a psychologist? Because, we were talking about childhood before. I think when you grow up nurturing or other people in your life, you kind of lay a blueprint for helping other people. And I think if you're a person that was kind of helping a parent, or there were certain things that you were wired to do early on in your life, you end up doing as a profession, don't you? So I think, I really wanted to be... Because remember LA Law, that wonderful show from back in the 80s? I wanted to be in a hot pink professional suit and be in the courtroom. But something changed.
And you wanted to be in there's so many TV shows that I just got in my head just from the, what is the name of the show? Good looking guy. It's a new show. Suits. Oh, yes. It's called Suits.
Oh, yes.
Have you seen that?
Suits, always at Harvey Specter, and the Lincoln lawyer. I'm really enjoying at the moment. Very handsome man.
I have not seen that. Okay,
you'll love it.
Marney, I'm going to write that down too. Did you come up with this comment? Anxiety, love, spare time? Because I'm going to steal it. Is it somewhere else?
I say it all the time, so let's just make it mine. Okay. I don't know.
You heard it somewhere. So anything else you can tell the women and men who are listening, sitting here going, my spouse is having a midlife crisis. Yeah. And they think everything's okay, and I'm sick and I'm worried and I'm doing my best to survive with my kids and live my life. What do you want to tell them?
Yeah, I would say don't be scared, because I think it's a very confusing time, isn't it? I think it's a really confusing time for all parties when this happens. And sometimes I think we see in other people things that we're going through, and we see things before they see them. So I would say pull out that empathy, seek to understand, try and not be driven by your emotions. And if you're a partner witnessing the crisis behavior, whatever that looks like in your partner, is get help for yourself and just make sure that you're getting really supported. Otherwise, you'll get bottled up with your own negative emotions and might make decisions or interact in a way that's not particularly helpful either. So I would say look after yourself foremost, get the right support from someone else. And then
what should they, in your opinion? Yes, okay, that's where I was going. In your opinion, what is the biggest thing these people, these left behind, I hate saying those words because I don't believe that, but that's just something someone will say. What is your biggest advice for them to do?
Yeah, we're learning to communicate.
That's it? Okay.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Look after yourself and learn those strategies to be able to communicate. Otherwise, you'll either hide away or you'll get into fight mode and fight or flight response, and that's not particularly helpful. So
could the communication be like, you're an asshole and I don't like you?
It probably, you know what, that will happen at the beginning, but everyone's going to be in a defense mode and it doesn't help in the long run. But I guess at the beginning when everyone's emotional, that naturally, so I think we shouldn't judge that at all, because I think that will naturally happen when we're in fight or flight response. Yeah. But when everything settles, I think, communicate. It's a bit like any relationship book. When it calms. But once we're all animals, aren't we? We're all baboons. We're all butting heads in the moment. So I think. Yeah,
I in my teachings, I teach people to get to that calm place really quickly. Yeah. Because when you're an asshole, that doesn't serve anybody. Yeah, and it makes him kind of say, okay, you're good. You're okay, so
Yeah.
I can deal with my shit,
Yeah.
which is hard to do because
It's very
everyone
hard
wants
to do.
to be
Yeah.
justified.
Well, exactly. But I think we all know, and if we all reflect, and we even move it away from the relationship context, in any situation where we've got two people in fight or flight mode, nothing good comes from that in the moment. Like nothing, you can't move to a point of resolve, can you? So it is always better to get to a point where everyone's in a calm mode, when that parasympathetic nervous system is back on, because that's also where our thinking brain turns back on again. But it takes time. So I think, we have to have some compassion here for everyone involved.
Yes, and I couldn't agree with you more. And empathy is the number one. So Crisis to Contentment is the name of Marty's book. Please look it up. It's on Amazon. If you want to reach out to her, I'll have her contact information in the notes below as well. So I will also put your book link in the link below, or in the notes below
Wonderful.
this as well. So people can get that. If you can send that to me, I will put all of it below.
Beautiful.
Okay?
Beautiful.
In the
Thank you
notes.
so much, Laurie.
Thank you, Marney. I so appreciate you taking time to be here and sharing with my wonderful followers. They're all great people. And I hope one of them reaches out to you. They may.
Thank you so much. And great chat.
That was amazing, huh? It is fascinating that even in Perth, Australia, like the other side of the world, people are having these same problems. It's not just you. It's not just your husband. It's not just your wife. It's worldwide. And you heard her opinions about what's happening, and I have my own too. But the bottom line is you have choices. I want you to come to my videos, my private videos, which will now be an app. You are going to have on your phone a little button. I'm not sure what that button will say, but you're going to be able to click it and you'll be able to connect to my app right on your phone. No longer the website. It's coming next month. So be sure, if you always wanted to sign up, now's the time, because I don't know if my pricing is going to change. I still have to figure that out. Anyway, if you have anyone that you want me to talk to, please send them my way. And if you need me, reach out to me at thewifeexpert@gmail.com. And in the meantime, I'm here for you. And I'll see you next time. Thank you for supporting my channel.